All right, busy 49ers morning. They've added yet another player. According to Jeremy Fowler, Chris Hubbard, the veteran swing tackle, is signing with the 49ers. They have needed a swing tackle. That was definitely a position of concern. And Hubbard has actually done that, and he's done that for a long time in the NFL. Again, 33 years old, was last with the Tennessee Titans. The pass blocking actually wasn't bad for Chris Hubbard last season. The concern has been injuries for him. Over the past 3 years, he hadn't finished them healthy, tore his biceps muscle. That cut his 2023 campaign short. But again, you wouldn't expect a player to be available right now without some sort of limiting factor. And the 49ers are not signing Chris Hubbard to be a starter. They need insulation along that offensive line. And this is a player who's actually played all 5 offensive line positions over the course of his NFL career, including 2 snaps at center a few years ago. I don't expect Chris Hubbard to be at center for the 49ers, but he's played mostly right tackle, has played enough left tackle to be considered a swing option, has played right guard and left guard, and those 2 snaps at center. So 2 moves for the 49ers over the course of the last 12 hours or so, maybe a little bit more than 12 hours. They also signed the big defensive lineman Shael Brown after a tryout. That tryout happened during the rookie minicamp. So we can slot both of these guys into the 49ers 90-man roster. I already talked about Shael Brown last night, so you can go ahead and look up that video whenever you have a chance. But for now, swing tackle Chris Hubbard needs to be added onto the roster. And with the addition of Chris Hubbard, who I think is a favorite to make this team, I do think the 49ers would like him more than Jalen Moore, assuming that he can stay healthy. The addition of Chris Hubbard gives the 49ers a full house along that offensive line. I'll slot him in right now into the right tackle spot, but I'm probably going to move one of these players out, either Jalen Moore. I think Spencer Burford, he's entering his 3rd year now, probably still makes the team. I would think they still have some belief in Spencer Burford, although the metrics weren't good for him last year. Nick Zakelj could be somebody that doesn't make the team for the 49ers. There's going to be some real competition over the course of training camp to see who's on the inside of the 53-man picture and who's on the outside of it. But Chris Hubbard, highlighted in teal, has joined San Francisco as a swing tackle. And obviously you can see behind Colton McKivitz, behind Trent Williams, a definite position of need. They no longer have Matt Pryor on the roster. Pryor was with the team for 1 year. The problem is that Jalen Moore, I think, is much better at left tackle with the footwork than at right tackle. And it almost necessitated the 49ers to have 2 swing tackles last year, with Matt Pryor working on the right side and Jalen Moore working on the left side. And that meant that you took up an extra roster spot. Somebody like Chris Hubbard has played both and has played decently well on both sides. So the 49ers might think that, okay, we can get away with just having 1 swing tackle on the roster this year, because he can actually swing. He could actually play both of those positions. So that's what the Hubbard signing is all about for the 49ers. I mentioned that it was a busy, busy morning. Well, the 49ers are going to be playing the Jets in the season opener, Monday Night Football, September 9th. That is the news of the morning. It dropped at about, I would say, 5:30 a.m. Pacific time for those of you who are still asleep. There is some, compelling backstory to this matchup. Obviously, you've got Aaron Rodgers against Brock Purdy. Remember, Aaron Rodgers didn't really get a chance to play last year because he tore his Achilles on the first drive of the season for the Jets. I believe that was also Monday Night Football. I was watching that, flying home from Pittsburgh after the 49ers had beaten the Steelers in week 1. So Rodgers will presumably return. Brock Purdy is going to be on the other side. And that is the number 1 49ers offense that Brock Purdy is helming, up against the number 3 Jets defense, coordinated by the coach, Robert Saleh, and the DC, Jeff Ulbrich, who are both former 49ers. Ulbrich, a linebacker for the 49ers, and there were rumors that San Francisco was trying to pry him away from the Jets to be their next defensive coordinator, but he was under contract with New York, so the Jets did not allow that to happen. So Saleh on one side against Kyle Shanahan on the other. Saleh, obviously, the former defensive coordinator for the 49ers, and Aaron Rodgers on one side, Brock Purdy on the other. I think this is going to be a test for both offensive lines when you look at the fact that the Jets have a good defense, and I think the 49ers are hoping to make a surge back up to defensive rankings after sliding a bit, but they were still a good defense last year. They just weren't great. They just weren't a top 3 unit like the Jets are. So it's going to be a load for the 49ers offensive line to handle. And the Jets, who added Tyron Smith, the left tackle, this offseason, former Cowboys tackle, their offensive line was atrocious last year, part of the reason why Aaron Rodgers got hurt so early in the season. They're trying to get better there to improve the offense, which was ranked number 32 in the league last year after Rodgers went down. So we'll see if they can turn it around against the 49ers. But I think the marquee matchup here is Kyle Shanahan's offense against the Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich defense to open the season. Monday Night Football. The last time that the 49ers and the Jets opened the season against one another was 1998. Candlestick Park, then known as 3Com Park, went to overtime, tied at 30. 49ers were backed up against their own 4-yard line, and they called a run to Garrison Hurst. Hurst took it 96 yards, the longest run in 49ers franchise history, for a touchdown. A walk-off touchdown. The 49ers beat the Jets 36-30. On the play, Terrell Owens had an amazing hustle play and block. He sprinted downfield, passed Garrison Hurst on the way, and was his escort into the end zone. But we cannot forget what Dave Fiore, the 49ers right tackle on the play, did. He also was sprinting out in front of the play and was also a road grader for Garrison Hurst. Fiore wore number 74, and his big-time movement on that one was evocative of Joe Staley, who was out in front of a lot of plays with his speed. But Joe Staley obviously famously led Alex Smith in that January 2012 divisional playoff game against the Saints on the quarterback sweep into the end zone. That was about 13 years after this 1998 season opener against the Jets. Fiore and Staley both wore number 74. So there was a little parallel there connecting 49ers. It's all in the past now, but connecting the 49ers past and the future at the time. If you want to connect the past with the present, well, Terrell Owens, who had that block, his son now is on the 49ers. We'll see if his son is still on the 49ers at the time of this season opener, which is coming on September 9th at Levi's Stadium. They don't like to have afternoon games in September at Levi's because it gets a little too hot, right? So this is a night game. This shouldn't be as much of an issue. It will be light outside probably for the entire first half. This is still early in the season, but it will end in the darkness at Levi's on September 9th. 5:20 kickoff, maybe 5:15 whenever these Monday night games start. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman in the booth, ESPN game. 49ers and the Jets, plenty of compelling storylines, including this one. I guess there was a little bit of a beef, at least online, between Charvarius Ward and Sauce Gardner, the two cornerbacks. Sauce Gardner, after the Chiefs beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl, said, "I told you all, 49ers might look better on paper, but the Chiefs always find a way." And then Charvarius Ward, not happy with that. Your ass ain't never sniffed the playoffs. You watching from the couch. Worry about the sorry-ass Jets. Everybody got something to say about the team in the Super Bowl. Your opinion doesn't need to be heard, kid. That's what Charvarius Ward said on Twitter in response to Sauce Gardner. So there you go. The Jets have some good DBs. That's going to be an interesting test for Brock Purdy. And then Aaron Rodgers is going to be working against Charvarius Ward and company. I think the 49ers DB room is deeper than it has been at any point during the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch tenure. Wow, interesting. Per Jeff Duncan, the 49ers and the Saints to hold joint practices in Irvine ahead of their preseason game. So the 49ers and the Chargers are going to be playing in the preseason as well. I would think that the 49ers and the Chargers are going to be holding joint practices. But the 49ers and the Saints are also going to be holding joint practices. And I guess the news there is the 49ers and the Saints are going to be playing in the preseason. I didn't know that would be the case. Be the first 49ers Saints preseason game since 2011, Jim Harbaugh's first year, when the Saints ran a bunch of blitzes against the 49ers in the preseason in San Francisco. That was a lockout year, so that they didn't have an offseason program. They weren't ready to pick up the blitzes, and Jim Harbaugh wasn't very happy about that. The 49ers, of course, exacted their vengeance in the postseason. That was the game where Joe Staley ran out in front of Alex Smith on the quarterback sweep. And I just compared that to Dave Fiore. So why does everything always tie together and connect? That's really cool. That's from Matt Barrows, or via Matt Barrows from Jeff Duncan. Per Jeff Duncan, the 49ers and the Saints to hold joint practices in Irvine ahead of their preseason game. I guess UC Irvine, that's where the Rams had training camp. I don't know if the Rams will continue to have training camp in Irvine if it's at UC Irvine. Obviously, the Chargers formerly were at Costa Mesa. I don't know if they're still going to be in Costa Mesa, which is right there by Irvine. That's where the 49ers held the joint practices with the Chargers in 2021. But I do know that I think that the 49ers will have a road preseason game against Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. And I do wonder if they're going to have joint practices as well. But we do know now that the 49ers and the Jets are going to be the season opener on September 9th. We also know that the 49ers have signed Shael Brown, the defensive lineman, after his tryout with the 49ers this past Friday. If you want a quick look at Shael Brown, here you go. This is some video that I got from the 49ers rookie minicamp. Shael Brown, formerly with the Tennessee Titans. Actually, Shael Brown, formerly with the Titans. So it's Chris Hubbard. Chris Hubbard was with the Titans last year. So an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman, both added by the 49ers here over the course of the last 15 hours or so. Both of them have their former team as the Tennessee Titans. And as I said, everything connects. I'm actually doing this show from Nashville, Tennessee, before I fly out to San Francisco on Thursday morning for the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event. So for some reason, everything is connecting here. We couldn't have scripted it any better. So 49ers, Jets, Chris Hubbard, Shael Brown, Saleh, Shanahan, Rodgers, Purdy, storylines galore. We don't forget Garrison Hurst's 96-yard touchdown run against the Jets in 1998. I had an article that came out this morning on The Athletic, speaking of Chris Hubbard and the 49ers offensive line. Why don't we talk about some of the rookies? And, I call it The Athletic. It's now officially merged with the New York Times. So whenever I do release an article, as you can see here, it's in the New York Times font. You can go check it out. Dominic Puni, Jarrett Kingston, and the 49ers offensive lines focus on the short shuttle. So I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to toss it into the comments section. You guys can go ahead and click on the link. It's probably a good time to sign up for The Athletic because you got insight like this. I'm going to send it to Mike as well. If you can put this in the description. Yeah, yes, this is also a thing really quickly. 2 players are going to be getting cut to make room for Chris Hubbard and for Shael Brown. We don't know who's going to be cut yet, though. Anyway, back to the article up on the screen. The 49ers added 4 offensive linemen this rookie acquisition period. They added Dominic Puni. They added Jarrett Kingston. Then they went into undrafted free agency. They added Drake Nugent out of Michigan and Bryson Mays out of Southern Mississippi. All 4 of these linemen ran exceptionally quick short shuttle times. The short shuttle is a back and forth sprint that measures explosion and change of direction. Before the 2018 draft, only 28 offensive linemen at the combine had run short shuttle times of 4.47 seconds or faster since 2010. This was according to Josh Norris, who does a great job tracking the draft, tracking the combine. Of those 28, I think 24 or 25 became NFL starters. And 24 or 25 were drafted. And of those 24 or 25, 84% of total snaps were played. So basically what Josh Norris found was that running a 4.47 or faster at the NFL combine as an offensive lineman seemed to be the most surefire statistical ticket, the most closest correlation to success as an offensive lineman in the league. So you looked at Dominic Puni. He ran a 4.40 short shuttle, extremely quick, moving side to side, even at 313 pounds. That was the 49ers' third-round pick this year. Jared Kingston ran a 4.47 short shuttle, so right at that cutoff. Bryson Mays didn't go to the combine, but ran a 4.46 short shuttle. And Drake Nugent ran a 4.50 short shuttle, just a little bit slower than the cutoff. But the point is that all four linemen that the 49ers added during this acquisition period ran extremely quick short shuttles, which seems to be a very analytically oriented development from the 49ers. On the other hand, three starters from the 2023 season up front for the 49ers ran particularly slow short shuttles, below average short shuttles. That included Aaron Banks, the starter at left guard, Spencer Burford, the starter at right guard, and Colton McKivitz, the starter at right tackle. So maybe the 49ers have said, okay, wait, we're not getting the performance we want to from this offensive line, especially in pass protection where they ranked in the 20s. And they've said, we need to find a way to do a better job drafting offensive linemen. Maybe we need to be a little bit more analytically oriented about this. Since these players that they drafted, Banks, Burford, and McKivitz, were not good in the short shuttle. And since the analytics people have found that the short shuttle seems to be very correlated to NFL success for offensive linemen via the draft, maybe the 49ers gave a little bit more say, a little bit more input to their R&D, their research and development department this offseason. At least on the surface, that's what it appears to be to me, because right after they drafted Dominic Puni, Kyle Shanahan was talking about his short shuttle. He said that it matched the tape. This guy moves extremely quickly. I told you guys about Dominic Puni last week after I first met him. Interview, it seemed to me that he carried the 313 pounds really well. Mom's a volleyball player. Dad was a football player. One of his brothers was a wide receiver. Other one of his brothers got a cup of coffee with the Cowboys as an offensive tackle. It seems, to me that Dominic Puni genetically has everything that he needs to be a good athletic NFL offensive lineman, and a very fast short shuttle of 4.40 reflects that. By the way, Jake Brendel also has a really quick short shuttle, 4.27. It's one of the quickest ones that we've seen. And we talked about Jake Brendel being an excellent, excellent athlete. I think that's how he punched his ticket from being an undrafted free agent to the starting center of the 49ers. A long journey from Brendel since 2016, but they've got quickness at center. I think they want to establish more quickness with some of these additions. Not limited to Dominic Puni, but Jarrett Kingston, who's up on the screen as well. And I wrote about him in this analysis. And then obviously Drake Nugent, very athletic center from Michigan, and Bryson Mays, an interior lineman from Southern Miss. So be sure to check out the article. The link is in the description, so you can go ahead and check it out. We'll see how many of these 49ers offensive linemen make the 53-man roster. We'll also see if anybody starts week one or starts over the course of this 2024 season. I would obviously think that Dominic Puni has the best chance, as the 49ers did add him earliest in the draft, which means they think he's the best player, the most talented player out of the linemen that they added. But anything does seem to be possible. That article is available on The Athletic, obviously part of the New York Times now, so go ahead and check it out. Speaking of that offensive line, again, the 49ers have signed Chris Hubbard, swing tackle. We are now waiting to see what the corresponding moves for the 49ers will be, because they had Shael Brown, the defensive lineman, after the tryout yesterday, and Chris Hubbard today. You have to stay under the 90-man limit. So let's move this to a 49ers Q&A. Nice little morning show. These are always fun. Here you go. 49ers Q&A. Remember yesterday, Jared Goff signed the big deal, $53 million a year. I think, I talked about Brock Purdy has long been on track to be a $50 million QB. That's $50 million plus. Could be that by the time he is in line to sign next year, the market rate is above $60 million. In fact, it looks like it's trending in that direction. There's a chance, and it's not a small one, that Brock Purdy is the first $60 million quarterback in NFL history. Looks like I was correct about that as well. Brock Purdy being a $50 million guy. I said that a couple months ago. I was like, oh no, he'll be in the 40s. It's like, are you kidding? Jared Goff's going to be in the 50s. Brock Purdy's going to be above $50 million. I would even say that 60 million is a very realistic possibility now, because we're still a good 10 months away from these discussions even really opening between Brock Purdy's camp and the 49ers. Now, that being said, he's got to play well this year. Nothing is a given in the NFL, but the trajectory that Brock Purdy is currently on is a really, really good one. All right, I'm ready to take some of your questions. I'm going to go into the comments section. Let's go for it. 240 of you here. That's a good number for early in the morning. And I'm sure that you have some questions about a couple 49ers signings, about the schedule. They're playing the Jets week 1. Brock Purdy in line for a new deal after this new season. Jared Goff now number 2 in APY on the quarterback market. So much going on. We're also about to pass 72,000 subs. So smash the sub button, smash the like button, do all that good stuff. Do I think Malik Mustafa is a free safety or a strong safety? Well, first of all, I think that the 49ers try to run interchangeable safeties. They try to run as much adaptability between the safeties and the linebackers as they can with how much their linebackers cover. So there is no defined role for the 49ers safeties. You'll see, because you start to show too many tendencies if somebody like Talanoa Hufanga is only near the line of scrimmage and he doesn't drop back to cover center field, or vice versa if somebody's just doing center field and not coming toward the line of scrimmage. So you've got to be interchangeable. You have to be able to cover. You have to be able to drop back into that back third of the defense, and you have to be able to play near the line of scrimmage. One of the reasons they love Malik Mustafa is because he's built like a ball of muscle, like a mini linebacker, so he can be a threat near that line of scrimmage. But it's not really worth much if he can't drop back and cover people, because then defenses will just test him in that way, and they'll expose him in that way. So I see Malik Mustafa doing both. I think that's the only right answer to this question. Will the Jets game be Brock Purdy's toughest challenge all season, or will it be the Chiefs? Well, maybe specifically facing the Jets defense is going to be really tough. I mean, they're a top 3 unit defensively. They might even be a little bit better this year. Jeff Ulbrich, Robert Saleh, both highly regarded defensive minds. I don't know how much the Jets are going to pose a threat offensively on the other side. Aaron Rodgers should be back, so obviously it's better than Zach Wilson. The offensive line theoretically should be better with somebody like Tyron Smith. They've also replaced Laken Tomlinson, who really struggled at that left guard position. So you look at the Jets and you have to factor in how threatening is their offense going to be, because that, I think, sets some parameters for the challenge that Brock Purdy is going to face. If the Jets are scoring 25 plus points a game, if they're able to put up over 25 points against the 49ers, that makes it all the much harder for Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense. So I don't know what the biggest challenge is going to be, but I think anytime that you're facing Patrick Mahomes on the other side as a quarterback, the job's inherently going to be a little bit harder, because Mahomes is a threat to score more points than somebody like Zach Wilson, who was the quarterback of the Jets last year. But this year, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers for New York. What are the long-term plans with Hufanga? I think that this year is going to determine so much of that. The 49ers want to see how he comes back from the ACL tear. They can get a very, very firm gauge of how important he is for the defense. It's a contract year for Talanoa. And then you look at the other safeties on this team and how they're performing. So somebody like Shael Brown, who they're very high on, obviously entering his second year. Somebody like Malik Mustafa. You see how these individual pieces might fit into the longer-term plan. And if you believe heck of a lot in Shael Brown and a whole heck of a lot in Malik Mustafa, and you see that belief materialize into good play on the field, and Talanoa Hufanga isn't quite the same coming off the ACL, well, he may not be in the 49ers' long-term plans. But if Talanoa plays a lights-out season and is a huge part of a resurgence to number 1 defensively for the 49ers, well, all of a sudden you have something to think about, right? At that point, you might have to think about an extension. And of course, extensions are... It's not going to be easy to give out a lot of extensions if you're the 49ers. You'll have to think about Dio Lenor. You have to think about Charvarius Ward. This is all on top of Brandon Ayuk, who's coming this offseason, and obviously Brock Purdy next offseason. So there are a lot of mouths to feed. Some numbers obviously do come off the books. The salary cap has been consistently increasing. The 49ers have managed the salary cap well with the zero interest strategy of pushing money back into future years when the cap is greater. So all of that is great. All of that could potentially continue working for the 49ers. But at some point, some financial restraint has to be shown. They have shown financial restraint through the years. And the way they delineated things is if a guy is an A-lister, they pay him. If he's not, they let him walk when it comes to free agency. I think Talanoa Hufanga was an all-pro before the torn ACL. How is he going to show up coming off the torn ACL? All-pro equals A-lister. So if he shows up again and is an all-pro coming back in 2024, it's probably a guy that you want to pay. If he doesn't, if he's somewhere in that B list, B plus list, well, then the 49ers probably do move on because he could probably make more money elsewhere than what the 49ers will be willing to pay. I do think that Dio Lenor is a priority re-sign for the 49ers. I mean, he is emerging into an A-list type of player. We'll see. Again, with Lenore this year, big-time proving grounds. Charvarius Ward, yes, that's an A-list player, but it's not a homegrown A-list player. That was a free agent signing. They use him to plug into a big-time position of need. They needed a cornerback after that 2021 season. Charvarius might be in the same category as L'Jarius Sneed, and the Chiefs just didn't deem it financially responsible or efficient to be able to hold on to L'Jarius Sneed. So we saw the tag and the trade there for L'Jarius Sneed. We'll see what the plan is, though, with Charvarius Ward. Mr. Corey says, I know for professional reasons you're not a fan of the 49ers, but would you be happy the Super Bowl drought ended this year? I would just cover it the way I cover everything. I'd cover it objectively, fairly, and thoroughly. I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be sad. I wasn't sad after they lost the Super Bowl. I covered it. I dealt with a lot of you guys who were very sad. I deal with a lot of you guys who are really happy out of these games. I just, kind of ride the waves of emotion that are part of professional sports, and I document them. I document and I analyze everything. And that's the only way that you can do this in an unbiased way. I mean, there's so many unreliable sources that either just make stuff up, don't know the game, or just get too emotionally attached to the highs and the lows, or all of the above. I think a lot of the sources are all of the above. I'm just striving to be different. I'm just striving to be the one that's actually a steady pillar that can lead the way in 49ers coverage. And I think that we've done that very successfully here over the course of the past couple years. Spell, I'm about to enter year 8, either year 7 or year 8. I've lost count of how many years I've covered the 49ers. Started in 2017, so you can do the math from there. Did Antoine Winfield's recent signing completely screw up the cornerback market? No, I mean, the Antoine Winfield, he's a safety, right? But he's a really versatile safety. He's a really good player. Signed for what, 20-something million per year? Top of the market deal. It edged out the top cornerback deal right before it. Really good players get paid market rate, which is just a little bit more than the previous high. So the high water mark usually increases because the salary cap is increasing, inflation, all that stuff. So if you're a top of the market player, you're going to make a little bit more than the previous top of the market player. I don't think it screwed anything up. I think same thing with Jared Goff. This is not a top of the market situation, but he fell in number 2. I think that was acknowledgement of the fact that he's definitely not the best quarterback in the league, but quarterback is a premium position. Jared Goff has put up good numbers. I know that he's limited. It's really funny because the limitations that a lot of people allege that Brock Purdy has, incorrectly allege that Brock Purdy has, they say that he can't deliver outside of structure consistently. Those are limitations that Jared Goff actually has. And that's why Jared Goff wasn't paid the very top dollar. That's why he wasn't paid more than Joe Burrow. And that's why Brock Purdy has a chance to be a $60 million guy next year, because it's ironic at pick number 262, he's got the out of structure capabilities, while Jared Goff at pick number 1 doesn't really have the out of structure capabilities. So Brock Purdy's better than Jared Goff. You'll see Brock Purdy push that market, or have the capability to push that market as the new top paid guy, or number 2 to somebody like Patrick Mahomes, depending on if Patrick Mahomes signs a new deal. I know he's on a 10-year deal, but that is going to have to get redone at some point because Mahomes now ranks number 8 in APY, and we know that he's better than the 8th ranked quarterback in the game. Somebody's concerned that Hufanga and Lenor will be priced out when their contracts are up. It's possible. And the 40, a lot of it's a kind of a play it by feel guessing game. The 49ers need to make sure that, and you can never fully make sure, but again, if you play it safely enough, you don't want to overflow the sink as far as money flowing in 1 year goes, because that's when you have to start cutting people. That's when you hit salary cap hell. So you never know how big the cap is going to be in future years. It's going to be really hard to predict who gets hurt, who underperforms to an exact degree. So you don't know how much extra spending you're going to have to do in any given year. Even with the best planning, you can still hit a point where your expenditures exceed what you expected and exceed what you expected to be the salary cap, and you hit a spot of cap hell. And we've seen teams like the Saints and the Rams hit cap hell recently, the Chargers, to where they've had to actually lop off players. They've had to cut players. And when that happens, there are painful trade-offs to make. The 49ers have not hit a spot of painful trade-offs. They're preemptively attacking inefficiencies, financial ones on their roster. So the Eric Armstead situation is a great example. They said, hey, this is an inefficient contract. This is the kind of thing that could get us in trouble if we keep it this way, but it's not guaranteed. So we can ask the player to take a pay cut. They asked him to take a pay cut. He declined. They didn't reach a suitable middle ground for both parties, and they replaced Eric Armstead. So 49ers have done stuff like that because they want to avoid cap hell down the road. I don't know if they're going to be priced out of the Diamondo Lenor range. I don't know if they're going to be priced out of the Talanoa Hufanga range. If they are, that might be a good problem to have, right? Because if they are priced out, especially if Talanoa Hufanga's range, that means that Talanoa Hufanga will have delivered a very good 2024 season. If he delivers a very good season, well, then the 49ers have excellent safety play. And it really is a do or die kind of situation, it seems like, for the 49ers with the Super Bowl. You got to get it done. You got to kick that door down sooner rather than later. 2024 seems to be when they have the most talent fitting under the umbrella of the salary cap, with Brock Purdy still on the rookie deal. So you're going to want that epically good play around Brock Purdy to be concentrated into 2024. I mean, there's long-term considerations, but right now, short-term thinking for the 49ers is higher up on the list than it's ever been. We'll put it there. We'll put it that way. Good morning. Kyle Juszczyk took a pay cut too. Yeah, that was another way of making the financial structure more efficient for the 49ers. I mean, I could open up the salary cap sheet so we can take a look at it. Some of you are wondering why Dre Greenlaw was not immediately visible on my salary cap update from Switzerland. It's because I have him as a pup projection. He's down here. So I didn't scroll down when I superimposed that screen. But Dre Greenlaw's $9.6 million cap hit is on the sheet. But somebody like Kyle Juszczyk, he's only accounting for $3.6 million this year. That's down a couple million. That saved the 49ers some 2024 space. Somebody like Brock Purdy's only counting $1 million this year. This is an in-season projection. So this is a 53-man projection, and this is already counting the $18 million that will free up on June 2nd with Eric Armstead's contract that hasn't yet freed up. Will the 49ers do a Diamondo Lenor contract extension a year or two early before he hits the market? I think it'd be smart with somebody like Diamondo Lenor. Will it be possible? Will he want to wait? Will he want to? I mean, some players would rather hit the open market and they'll wait it out, because once they hit the open market, they've got way more leverage in any potential deal because you've got other teams able to offer them, right? So that's up to the player. If the player can really bet on himself and wait, well, the player can take the financial security, but for less overall money a little bit earlier. And it takes both sides to sign a contract. So the player has to be willing to do this as well. I'm sure the 49ers would love to get an early discount on Diamondo Lenor, but we're taught, if they approach him with that idea and he thinks their offer is way too low, he could say, no, I'm going to wait till I hit actual free agency. Is Chris Hubbard decent? I think the metrics indicate that he is. He's had decent pass blocking metrics throughout essentially his entire NFL career. He's a swing tackle. He's had some injury issues over the past 3 years, but he's a 33-year-old swing tackle. Pass blocking efficiency, he ranked number 51 of 86 qualifying tackles last year. He ranked better than Colton McKivitz and Mike McGlinchey in pass blocking efficiency. Those two guys were down near the bottom. I'm not saying he's going to start over Colton McKivitz because run blocking and durability and all that is a big part of this. But as far as a swing tackle goes, if you can get a guy that's close to middle of the pack, pass block efficiency wise, that's probably the best you're going to be able to do as any team. Again, there's a shortage of offensive linemen, quality offensive linemen, especially tackles in this league. They're hard to come by. This is why you need a premium draft pick usually to get somebody competent at that position, competent enough to be a surefire starter, or at least as close as you'd like to be a surefire starter. The proliferation of athletic defensive linemen in the NFL is a real thing. They've outpaced offensive linemen. Interestingly, I think that the pendulum might be swinging in the other direction. It's a question I asked John Lynch a couple months ago, and he said he thought that might be the case, that offensive linemen get paid so much that it's a market thing. People start thinking about playing offensive line earlier in their football careers in high school instead of defensive line because they could see, okay, maybe there's a chance to make some money. The Rams signed a couple guards this year who aren't great players, right? They signed Jonah Jackson, formerly of the Detroit Lions. They signed Kevin Dotson, two free agent guards who are middle of the pack at best when it comes to pass protection metrics. They signed them both for $16 million a year. So you don't have to be a great guard and you can make a whole heck of a lot of money, to the point where there's such demand for decent offensive linemen now that more young kids are going to want to play offensive line because it's going to be, it looks like it's a pathway to make some money in the pros. It's just how the football market works. So as this new crop of offensive linemen matures into NFL age, I think we'll start to see the athleticism on the offensive line catch up to the athleticism on the defensive line that has been overwhelming O-lines for years. That's sort of how the course of history works in football. Right now, teams are paying premium for offensive linemen who aren't great. For good but not great offensive linemen. Teams are paying an absolute premium for those guys. That's why the 49ers wanted to focus more on bargain bin free agency and the draft. Meanwhile, the other side of the ball, they focused on free agency. They focused on the defense and the defensive line in particular in free agency, because teams aren't paying a premium for defensive linemen, especially the rotational guys, because the supply there is much greater. So the market dictates that the price there in free agency is cheaper. So the 49ers spent in free agency on the defensive line, and then they drafted and they signed rookies who have constrained deals by the rookie wage scale for the offensive line. Laken Tomlinson was not good for the Jets, which is why they cut him. Suffered a fall off in performance after he left the 49ers. Clinton thinks that the Rams will win the division this year if Darnold, why did I say Darnold? If Stafford stays healthy. Not Darnold. Darnold's in Minnesota. When is my swim? Saturday at 5 a.m. You can go watch. If you're walking across the Golden Gate Bridge early in the morning, you might be able to see me swim underneath it. You need to check the weather forecast for this weekend. Meanwhile, Joe says The Rams are not winning the division. 49ers are favorites at this point, as they should be. I think they're Super Bowl favorites at this point. Do you think Kyle reduces the amount of times he's used 21 personnel to run 3 wide receiver sets this year, or will the 49ers continue to be a league leader in the amount of times they line up in 21, 22 personnel? I think assuming receivers all stay healthy, you're going to see more 3 wide sets. The number I keep coming back to is in the postseason, the 49ers called 109 pass plays and only 77 run plays. Brock Purdy has turned this into a pass-first team. You play to the strengths of your football team. And not only do they have a great quarterback in Brock Purdy, but they also have a lot of receiving weapons, and you don't want to be keeping those guys off the field. If Ricky Pearsall can be the press man beater that they think he can be, and that also means, winning in the slot. It doesn't necessarily mean beating another team's best cornerback, because you still have Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel on this team. If Pearsall can be that, if Juwan Jennings is still on this team, you got to find snaps for these guys. And Jennings is a good blocker. We'll see what Pearsall can do. I think that some of his tape in college shows this guy's a dog. I keep on talking about the strong lower body. I think he plays stronger than his weight would indicate that he plays. You're going to want this guy on the field. Now, he's also got to acquire the playbook. It takes Kyle Shanahan wide receivers usually some learning curve time, right, to get integrated into the offense. So it's probably not going to be an overnight thing for Ricky Pearsall. If it is, that's great for the 49ers. But I think as the season progresses, you can go back and look at last postseason as a hint. And this is a pass-forward offense now, thanks to the quality of the 49ers quarterback. Here's a more optimistic comment from Clinton, who also thinks the Rams are going to win the NFC West. But he thinks that Pearsall will find his way onto the field. He's a huge Gator fan. Pearsall, one thing that probably stopped him from being on a lot of teams' radar in the first round was the fact that he had terrible quarterback play at Florida. I'm sure Clinton can attest to that. Went through 3 quarterbacks last year, and none of them were good. So that limited his production. But imagine if he was playing with a really good quarterback in college and he goes for 1,500 receiving yards instead of 900. All of a sudden, he's a surefire first-round draft pick. And that, doesn't change the quality of player that you have. The draft is a lot of irrational decision-making based on overt statistics like that. And you can't play that way because football is a team sport. So, based on what we've seen, any objective football reporter, analyst has been impressed with Ricky Pearsall so far. Those of us who know the game, those of us who watch the tape, who've actually talked to people who know the nuances of receiving play, who know what we're looking for, who aren't just trying to flame up, outrage on social media. Everybody, all these people see the fit, from Brian Baldinger to Steve Smith to Greg Cosell. I mean, these are all respected names. There are respected names covering the 49ers and the NFL in general, and there are names that aren't respected that are covering the 49ers in general. And the delineation, between the two reflects the delineation of opinions on Ricky Pearsall. So you've got to give the guy a chance to integrate to the NFL level. It's never a slam dunk that a particular player will. But from what we've seen so far, it's very apparent why the 49ers like Ricky Pearsall's skill set. It's because they think he has the little shoulder dip, the stutter step, he just moves like a pro. He's got the movement capability of somebody that can truly separate at the NFL level. That part of his game reminds them of Dante Pettis. Now, don't go running, screaming, afraid right now, because I know Dante Pettis, just mentioning that, will trigger a lot of 49ers fans. They also think that he brings toughness that Dante Pettis didn't bring. And if you watch the tape at Florida, there's a whole lot of toughness on it from Ricky Pearsall. I think a lot of it's the strong base that allows him to absorb some contact, but even more of it is just the way that he was raised. His dad's a firefighter for the Phoenix Fire Department, was a good receiver himself at Northern Arizona, taught him the intricacies of route running growing up. So the attention to detail has been there for Ricky Pearsall. And then, you're just a man running over the middle of the field, able to soar up, make some really nice catches. You got to have courage to do that. He just has that innate courage, that innate bravery needed to be a receiver who isn't afraid of contact at the NFL level. So he did it in college. The 49ers think that he can add that toughness into his game and carry it over to the NFL level. And they think in that way he's a lot different than somebody like Dante Pettis. Remember that in 2018, they drafted Pettis because they were enamored with his ability to separate. But then they quickly became disillusioned with Pettis because they didn't think he was tough enough. A knee jerk is a negative word. I think it wasn't a knee jerk reaction. It ended up being a really good draft pick. The reaction, though, to the disappointment with Dante Pettis was to pick Deebo Samuel in the very next draft. Deebo Samuel, big, strong, tough player, might not be the best separator, but he gave the 49ers that grit at the receiver position that they wanted. In an ideal world, Ricky Pearsall will be a hybrid of both of those players. So you'll have Ricky Pearsall as a separator, a smooth route runner like a Dante Pettis, but he'll also be a bulldog like a Deebo Samuel. Is he going to be as good as Deebo Samuel breaking through tackles? No, nobody's saying that. But he'll bring toughness that Dante Pettis lacked to that receiver position. Pettis cost the 49ers. He might have cost the 49ers a Super Bowl in 2021 or 2022. Season opener, he scored on the broken play against the 49ers with the Bears. That started the comeback for the Bears in week 1. 49ers lost. That ended up costing San Francisco the 1 seed. They would have gotten Philadelphia at home had they won that game. I know everything is very crystal clear in retrospect, but funny stuff, right? Back in that 2022 season. Probably not too funny for 49ers fans, but poetic. Poetic for sure. Dude, 200 pounds against an NFL. Okay, first off, do you realize, Kenny, that there are NFL linebackers who are only about 210 pounds now, maybe 215 pounds? The average weight of the NFL linebacker now, I would say, is probably 220, not much more than that. 200 pounds is actually big for a wide receiver. I think that you're operating in the wrong era here. First off, if you're a 200-pound receiver, you're not at a big weight disadvantage against a linebacker. Second off, if we're talking about Ricky Pearsall or any receiver being matched up against a linebacker, the receiver wins. The receiver's quicker. So I'm not really sure what you're trying to say here. I think this is kind of a self-own. 200 pounds against an NFL linebacker would be awesome for the 49ers. The 49ers would love Ricky Pearsall to be matched up with as many linebackers as possible. We'll see how many snaps that linebacker can handle before he gets benched, if that ends up being the case, or how many snaps the defensive coordinator who lines that linebacker up against Ricky Pearsall lasts before he gets fired. Yeah, I mean, Jerry Rice was probably around, he might have been lighter than 200. Looking back at Jerry Rice's frame, might have been, he probably was in the 190s. He might have been listed as 200, but I mean, you're at a certain weight, you are sacrificing movement capability. Deebo Samuel's 215 to 220. he is not the best separator in the game. He's not the best route runner in the game. Now he's a complete tank. He's a complete truck out there. That's his strength. He's one of the best yak guys that we've ever seen. So you don't want all your receivers to be 220. Some of them, the X position that's going to have to do a little bit of both. Brandon Ayuk, he's going to be about 200, 205. That's great. But then you're going to have some guys that you do want to have a little bit more separation ability that won't necessarily be the focal point of the offense, but they're going to have to be able to wiggle their way free, maybe on the inside. That's why slot guys can be a little bit smaller. Now, the 49ers run the big slot as well. They do that with Juwan Jennings. That's mainly for blocking advantages. They have every single body type now in that receiver room. They've got the bulldozer and Deebo Samuel. They've got the versatile X and Brandon Ayuk. They've got, I think, a very uniquely built slot guy in Ricky Pearsall, in that he's uniquely built and he's got unique athleticism, 4.4 speed. He's obviously got the 6'6" 3-cone. So he has the skill set to play in the slot, but he's got the speed to play on the outside. And I think he has the strength to play both. That's why I keep on talking about the base. So on paper, Ricky Pearsall is an interesting hybrid type of player. They've got the small slot in Jacob Cowing, 5'8". They've got another small slot in Trent Taylor. I don't know if he makes the 53-man roster, but he's a veteran that has played that position. They've got the big slot in Juwan Jennings. So, I mean, you go through this receiver room. They've got every type of body there. And then you could add the fact that George Kittle at 6'4" is one of the best slant runners in the game, coming from the tight end position. Add the fact that Christian McCaffrey runs the angle route better than probably anybody in the game, coming from the running back position. Add in the fact that Kyle Juszczyk is able to be a threat in the pass game as well. That is a loaded offense. I think the 49ers have all their bases covered. Can they get a little bit better? Probably. I would say tight end 2. That's why they keep on looking for a tight end 2. They wanted to add Brock Wright, restricted free agent. Didn't work. The Lions were able to keep him. So you get better there. You can obviously get better along the offensive line, but I think that getting better at receiver helps you be better along the offensive line because you could beat man coverage quicker. So that's how the 49ers offense is lining up. You can watch the swim in person. You can, like I said, we're going to be jumping at 5 a.m. on Saturday at Point Bonita. So if anybody's in the marina with a view and you got a nice Zoom, or you're on the Golden Gate Bridge, even Hawk Hill early in the morning, you probably get some footage. We'll get some video footage of it though, and I'll post it later. I'm not going to live stream the swim or anything because I can't run the live stream if I'm actually swimming. Kyle Juszczyk's got really good hands. He could return punts too. They feel that he might be their most dependable option just to catch the ball, punt return wise. They do have Trent Taylor on the team now. He's very dependable as far as just catching the ball, just excluding the return aspect from it. But they trust Kyle Juszczyk with a lot of things. Also has been a holder for this football team, right? When Mitch Wishnowsky suffered a concussion in the 2021 season, remember they're playing the Rams? Must-win game, Week 18. Kyle Juszczyk came in and held for Robbie Gould. And you've got to have good, quick hands to hold. It's going to be very cold. Point Bonita to the city, under the Golden Gate Bridge. I will try to bring my little underwater camera that I've done lives with. Maybe I stop under the bridge and do a quick live from there right at sunrise. Just one person swimming with me. There's 2 of us and we'll have a boat. It's going to be my best friend Colton swimming with me. So it should be good. It's the same crew, same boat, same fellow swimmer as our October Alcatraz swim is right here. We're hoping for better conditions. We were dealing with really, really choppy water back in. We're doing really choppy water. This is October 1st. This was before the 49ers played the Cardinals. Don Giovanni says, forget the swim. What's up with the new offensive line? Well, here, I have that for you too. If you want to talk about the new offensive line, then you should read my article from this morning. If you don't want to watch us swimming through cold, choppy water under the Golden Gate Bridge. That is available to you right here. Dominic Pooney, Jared Kingston, and the 49ers O-line focus on the short shuttle. That's, I think, I encapsulated what the 49ers are focusing on. What they don't currently have starters. I'm talking about the starters from this past year who are, I mean, Trent Williams and Jake Brendel obviously scored well in the short shuttle, but between Aaron Banks, Spencer Burford, and Colton McKivitz, not good short shuttle scores. I wonder if we have John Feliciano's short shuttle score. Let me look at this. I know Feliciano's been in the league for a while. So a lot of times, 2015, John Feliciano had a slightly above average short shuttle. 4.74. So there you go. Feliciano beat out Burford last year down the stretch. Williams is the best offensive lineman for the 49ers. And Jake Brendel found his way into a starting center spot in large part due to his exceptional athleticism. But they don't have great movement capability at left guard. They don't have great movement capability at right guard. And they don't have great movement capability at right tackle. Therefore, they have focused on movement capability with their new offensive linemen. The 4 new guys all have really fast short shuttle times. So read all about it in The Athletic. It's been a fun 49ers update. They have signed Chris Hubbard, swing tackle, formerly of the Titans, 33-year-old. I think, slots in really well with what the 49ers need behind that starting offensive line. Actually played some decent football with Tennessee last year, has carved out a nice career for himself, has been around for a decade in the NFL. And we do know that the 49ers are going to be linking up with the Jets in the season opener on September 9th. All fun stuff. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you very soon.